You're listening to DMCs with Lolo Mhaga, where I sit down with interesting people who have interesting things to say. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Good day and welcome, my dear friends, to another installment of DMCs with myself, Lolo Mhaga. For those of you who are new to the show, by way of a brief introduction, I'm an admitted attorney specializing in property, finance, and employment law with a real passion, with a real love for all things politics, economics, and finance and related. The name of the show is DMCs, which stands for Deep Meaningful Conversations, which I shall endeavor to do with some real movers and shakers of our world. And in that regard, I think we have quite the interesting guests here today. I had the pleasure of attending school with this gentleman, and I could always see his leadership potential and debating prowess. The only downside is that he supports an absolutely terrible team by the name of Manchester United. But it's okay, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive you for that. He subsequently went on to business and is now currently delved into the perilous world of politics, having become an integral member of Duduzane Zuma's team in his campaign for the ANC Presidency, Mr. Ziphozonke Mhlongo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your DMCs.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We've had many DMCs in the past, but I look forward to this DMC.
So do I. What I like about you is that you always have something interesting and an interesting take. So I think this will be quite fulfilling for our audience in that regard. So before we delve into some of your current work, I'd like the audience to get to know you a bit better, get to know some of your motivations. So tell me, why did you make this transition into the world of politics?
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity, Lolo. So as a young person, you grow up being told that, what, do 1, 2, and 3. If you do 1, 2, and 3, it'll equal this. And what I started realizing in my life is that, okay, you go through the school route, you go through the university route, you go, and then you're supposed to get a job, or if you want to start a business, you're supposed to do 1, 2, and 3, and this is gonna happen. And then I started to realize that, like, okay, we're doing all these things, but why does it seem like young people are the ones that are always losing? You know, um, we have the university students that are they're doing what they're told. They go to university, they graduate, they do very well, but then now they're sitting 4 years later, they're sitting at home doing nothing. Young people are starting businesses, but then when they need that funding, that 20%, that 5%, they're not getting it, but they're seeing, someone who probably doesn't deserve it as much as they do, who's older, who's getting everything that they want. So then I was like, no, something's wrong, something's wrong. And we need to understand the system a bit better so that we as young people can start telling other young people to say, listen, guys, I think we're going about it the wrong way. This is how we should do it if we're trying to achieve the things that we're trying to achieve. So just from a point of view of seeing how we've been struggling as young people, that's what made me decide, you know what? Yes, I'm in business, I do all these things, but it doesn't mean anything if that business is not going to survive 5 years from now, because I also sat on my hands and did nothing. So let's change the system. Let's get actively involved in the system as young people, so that 10 years from now we can look back and say, okay, we're in a better situation because we didn't sit on our hands 10 years ago and did nothing. So that's how I ended up in this position that I'm in now in politics.
That's really fascinating. I like that your approach is youth centered, which I think is quite unique in our current political climate, as youth considerations aren't really factored all that much in political decision making. And actually, you reminded me of something quite interesting. I was reading your tweets this morning, and I saw that you tweeted, Youth Day is no longer a celebration of the 1976 youth. Youth Day has become a painful reminder of how the youth of 1976 have betrayed the youth of today and destroyed our future. That's quite a controversial statement to make. So, would you care to elaborate a bit for our audience?
Yes. So just on the controversial part, I'm not scared to speak controversially because I believe in my spirituality so much that the only thing that I can be scared of is God. That's first and foremost. So if people are always going to try to get me in the corner of, hey, that's controversial, I don't think you should say that. That will never work with me because I'm too spiritual. I'm too spiritual. So that's one thing. So um, the tweet, listen, it's the truth. The youth of 1976 did a great thing. They did a great thing. Let's not put that to the side. They did a great thing. But what did they do with that great thing? They got themselves into positions of power. They got themselves into business. They got themselves into jobs. They got themselves into the economy of South Africa. But now, as human beings, what you're supposed to do is, in the general progression of life, is once you get old, you're supposed to build something and then hand it over to your kids, right? But they are not doing that. They are our elders now. The youth of 1976 are our elders now, and they are not doing what you're supposed to do naturally, which is give back a sustainable, healthy country or home or whatever it is, or business, to your kids. They're not doing that. So how can we celebrate that? It used to be a celebration 10 years ago. But in the last 10 years, we realized that it's actually more of a painful reminder to say, these guys are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and if they keep ignoring us long enough, eventually we are going to have to say, as young people, you know what, guys, we need to stop asking for this. Now we need to go take it ourselves, and we don't want to do that because we don't want to be called disrespectful, but it looks like we might have to be okay with being called disrespectful, to achieve this goal. Because Lolo, I'm sure you don't want to be 40, bro. You don't want to be 40 with two kids and you don't have anything to give to your kids because you didn't do anything about it 10, 15 years ago. You don't want that. But they're gonna force us now to get into a position where, as young people, we're gonna have to say, okay, guys, how do we get these guys out instead of asking nicely now?
Oh,
So
that's
that's
yeah, no, certainly, and I think I share that sentiment. I just have a bit more of a cynical take in that regard, and I'll actually we'll delve a bit into this as we get into your work and your work with Duduzane. But just to get your thinking a bit, one of my issues with our youth in general in this country
yeah.
is the degree of disengagement. So
Mm,
whether we're talking about the number of people voting, if we're looking at people about 35 downwards, that's the lowest number of voters by far. I mean, the 18 to 19, the 18 to 25 bracket, less than half, than the older categories. We see more of a fascination with celebrity, with a certain lifestyle than sort of building sustainable futures. I don't know. How do you sort of see, or what's your approach rather, to sort of get this group politically engaged? Because should they become, I mean, because the natural numbers and the number of people who are youth in the population, there'll be quite a formidable political force, but it's just actually getting them involved and active. What's been your sort of approach, and what have you learned in that regard?
yeah. No, thank you for that question. That's actually the crux of everything. I think as the issue with the youth is that when you say, guys, become politically conscious, they think that it actually means become a politician. So it's making them understand that, listen, you don't have to be a politician to be politically conscious. You need to understand that in whatever sphere in your life that you are in, there are politics. The politics of the country determine what is going on in whatever sphere you're in. So it will help you, not me, it will help you to better understand that climate politically so that you can better navigate that situation that will be beneficial to you as a young person. So for me, that's how I usually start off the conversation. I'm always like, listen, you don't have to be a politician. Let's just understand the politics that come. Like I have some friends that are doctors, for example. I say, do you realize that you have a medical board, like the medical board, right? And they'll be like, yeah, that's the board that I'm trying to get approved by so I can be a doctor. Then I'll be like, you do realize that politics governs who gets on that board, right? So for example, in accounting also, we have the psych, I think they write the psych exams. And they're always complaining every year, oh, young black people are not passing. And I'm like, do you understand the politics that governs what is going on there at the board level, how those people get on the board? Because maybe we should look at maybe changing the people that are on the board so that we can start, because let's be honest, there are people there that are against growth for young people. There are people there. We accept that. So how do we understand that people, we need to move these blinkers from what young people first to say, guys, there's politics in your everyday life. Not, they think when young people, when we talk about politics, they think it's ANC, DA, EFF, and then that's it. You know what I mean? And I think that's like the bare minimum. That's like low. Your everyday life has politics, you know. So just getting them to understand that first. And then also, I think you touched on another aspect. You said just on the numbers point of view, getting them to understand that, I always use this example. The ANC's government right now, only 10 million people voted for the ANC.
Certainly.
Only 10 million. Only 10 million people voted for the ANC.
Yeah.
There were 18 million people that were registered to vote and didn't vote, right? Of those 18 million people, about 14 million are young, are so-called young people, youth. So just that on its own, if those 14 million people got together and said, "You're tired of this, you know, let's vote in one way," you'd vote out the ANC tomorrow.
Exactly.
So it's getting them to understand that politics are in everyday life. You don't have to be a politician. And then also understanding the numerical advantage that you have. So the moment you decide to do something about it. So those are how I usually shape our conversations and when we get started with young people.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this play out with some of our African peers. If I think of a country like Zambia, I mean, the sea change that occurred recently, and that was off the wave of engagement by young people and voting in unprecedented numbers. And they managed to unseat an incumbent, you know, who had been around for quite some time. And I guess that should serve as a lesson to the youth of this country that should we get together, should we organize, should we act together, not only can we make significant political change, but then politicians or those in leadership in various aspects, whether in business or whatever, they'll have to pay attention to our concerns and needs because their job is riding on it. But I'd like to exactly. Yeah. I'd like to change tack just a little bit. You mentioned the ANC quite a bit already in our chat, and sort of delving through your social media, I saw that you recently attended a regional conference for the Youth League, Ethekwini, if I'm not mistaken. So are you a member of the Youth League and the ANC itself?
Yes, I'm actually the chairperson of Ward 35 here in Ethekwini. So I'm pretty active. I really don't usually like putting it out there because I don't believe in positions. I don't believe in all that stuff because it's very limiting in South African context. But that's so just to explain the level of activity that I have within the ANC. So yes, I am a member. I'm a member.
Yeah, you see, that's very strange for me because I think what you have to say is very interesting, and I think a lot of especially young people or people in general, young or old in this country, would resonate with sort of the failure of fulfilling the dream and how those who fought have sort of in the democratic area taken up the whole space and not created a sustainable path or created something to pass on to those who will inherit in the future. So, you know, I'm just thinking 28 years into democracy, 2/3 of our youth are unemployed. And that is largely a failure of the ANC because they've been in charge for that whole time. And, you know, a lot of our analysts have sort of been saying that the ANC is unlikely to regain their majority in 2024. So considering all these factors, well, why would you back that ship that seemingly seems to be on the decline? I don't know. Don't you feel like it's more liability than, you know, good for your political career?
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, again, back to the spirituality thing. It's not a career for me. This is just part of a process in life in which I have to go through and just helping us as young people to get somewhere. So it's not I don't look at it as a career. So backing a sinking ship. Is it okay?
I like that.
Is it the ANC? Is it the ANC that is doing this to the people, or is it people in the ANC that are doing this to the people? Because when you say ANC, the only way you can say it's the ANC is if you look at its policies. The policies, the ANC policies are not saying be corrupt. The ANC's policies are not saying neglect the youth. The ANC's policies are not saying those things that we are seeing. In fact, what we are seeing is there are people in the ANC that are taking the ANC from in a direction that is not what the ANC is saying must happen. So now who do you blame for that? Okay, you can blame the culture. You can blame the culture in the ANC. The culture in the ANC right now is a culture of, it's my turn to eat. That's the culture that is in the ANC. And that is a culture that I do not agree with. And in fact, one of the big, now you're talking about the Congress that I was at, the Youth League Congress that I was at, one of the big debates that we've had there was backing leaders that no one knows about. You see, we like to blame the leaders and say, hey, this leader is not good, or well, we put them there, now they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I always ask, but what do we as people, what homework do we do on these people before we vote for them? What homework? So there's a culture of we get told who to vote for and then we go and vote for, then we become sort of voting cattle instead of,
I couldn't agree more. That's,
you know what I mean?
One of the main problems.
That is the main problem. So we need to look at ourselves as young people, as Black people, as whatever people. We need to look at ourselves and say, how much thought are we giving into putting the type of leaders that we're putting in there? Because it doesn't make sense that I vote for a certain person and then when they start messing up, then I start complaining about that very same person that I voted for, and then not hold myself to some level of accountability too. So I think the culture in the ANC is messed up, but I don't think the ANC is messed up. It's sort of like having a vehicle that's in great shape, and then the person who's driving it is driving it erratically, then you blame the car. No, it's the person who's driving the vehicle who with the problem. And rather, let's change the person who's driving and say, hey, come sit at the back, bro. I'll take over now because, you know, the way you're driving is a bit erratic, you know, but the car's in great shape. The ANC, and then the other thing about the ANC is that it could be the EFF as the government. It could be, I don't know, BLF. It could be anyone, right? That's in power, and I would support them from this point of view.
Okay.
From this point of view, we need to stop looking at political parties like soccer teams. We need to stop saying, hey, this one's not performing. Therefore, hey, we need to, like you Arsenal fans, what you guys do is, oh, now that Arsenal not good, you start supporting Man City. And then it's like, oh, I've always supported. No,
oh, gosh, getting a bit close to home there.
At least with Man U, I've stayed, even though we're going through our struggles, I've stayed. So we need to stop looking at parties like soccer teams. Why do I say that? Because we need to understand the political science. The political science is saying that there is a Black party that is in power right now. A party that caters to Black people. Let me put it that way. Okay. A party that caters to the majority of South Africa. That's the party that's in power. So ANC is representative of a Black majority. Now, to play with that, for me is not understanding power. Because now what happens is, let's say you bring it under 50%. Now you're basically saying Black power, or majority power, we must reduce that under 50%. And you know, once you dip under that 50, I don't know how long it will take before we get back, if ever you get back. And the things that we are complaining about now, we will be complaining about them more so in a society where you see coalitions, for example. I just want to end this point with one more thing. 2016 was the first time, not the first, or I think the first time, if I'm not mistaken, where we saw coalitions.
Yeah.
Unite.
Well, we saw in the country, I think way back with the Western Cape and Cape Town initially.
Yeah, true.
But when we started seeing it play out in the rest of the country, it was 2016.
Yeah. That's the first time. Let me ask you something. What has been achieved by that?
I think
it's been 2016.
We've learned that one, they can be unstable in the sense that people can pull out the coalition and the whole thing falls apart, you know. Two, we've also learned that often because the parties that are coming together are so ideologically far apart, they can't actually get anything done because they can't agree, because they only really joined together because of, you know, wanting to get the ANC out rather than believing in anything of the same kind. So I certainly hear the point that you're making in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just also, I'm thinking as you're speaking, and I've delved a bit into the history of the ANC, and I've seen there've been various iterations of the ANC in different times and when different things were required. I don't think we can necessarily call the OR Tambo ANC the same as the ANC today, or the ANC just after democracy led by Nelson Mandela is necessarily the same as today. So that, like, as in any organization, it changes over time, and the culture is set by the people who currently inhabit, especially in leadership. So I can get your point in that regard. I'd like to shift a bit to some of your current work now. So what really drew me to you initially was your close work and relationship with Mr. Duduzane Zuma. And I was quite surprised to see, just how much general goodwill there is for him out there, or at least perhaps that's what I see in your videos. You would go to schools, you go to events and venues, and people would be going crazy for him. Tell me, what drew you to this gentleman?
Man, where do I start? One thing about Duduzane, I will start off by saying, is that TV is dangerous. Because if you watch TV and hear them speak about Duduzane, you'll think he's this monster. He's this guy, this corrupt dude. He doesn't care about people and all that stuff. Then when you meet him, if you had that point of view, when you meet him, you'll change immediately. He's the most humble guy you'll ever meet. For me, humility is the biggest draw for me to anyone. The humility of someone. And Duduzane's humility is something that strikes out immediately. In fact, sort of comes across very shy, in fact, more than what people would expect. But so what drew me to Duduzane is his willingness to change this country for the better. His willingness to actually get this country to grow, to grow from an economic point of view, to grow from a social point of view. His willingness to include the youth in that growth. That for us was the big thing, to say, you know what, we need a president who cares about the youth, who wants the youth to be at the top of his agenda. And Duduzane resonates the most out of anyone that I can see with those things.
Oh yeah. So his family name, however, does bring about a bit of controversy. I mean, he's a divisive figure in general. His father. Some people incredibly love him, and I think if someone would even say they would die for him, and some completely loathe the gentleman. Do you think bringing in someone who is intrinsically related to such a divisive figure could help bridge the differences, the frictions, the fighting in the party, or don't you think he would just exacerbate them?
Depends who you talk to. Who are you? Who's saying that he's divisive? Because on the ground, as you've said, when you introduced the Duduzane topic, you see the videos, you see how people react. On the ground, he's loved by the people. He's not divisive. In fact, he brings people together. He brings communities together on the ground. But now, if you're going to talk about people that don't know him and people that are making comments from up there in the Ivy Towers, then they're going to say what they're going to say. And all I can say is, as a human being, I would put my neck out there for that guy, because he's a principled man, very principled man, like principled and humble. Those are the two things that when you meet Duduzane, you will know for a fact that those are the two things that stick out. You even forget that this guy's a billionaire. You literally forget that this guy's a billionaire. That's how humble he is. So I would ask, to answer that question, I'd say, who's saying that he's divisive? Who's saying, yes, the name that is attached to him, but hey, Duduzane is his own man. He's his own man. He's not his father. He's not his sister. He's not, anyone. He's his own man. And I would appeal to everyone and say, judge him based on who he is and not what you are hearing from other people.
No, I certainly, I hear that. And I guess that's sort of the curse to some degree of having a father that has been so significant in South African history. It's not as easy for him to shape his own path. But once he sort of gains that traction, I think he can disassociate himself and sort of be viewed purely on his brand. So I'd like to delve a bit into sort of his views, your views on things like the economy. We've delved a bit into youth, but I saw you guys have an event coming up, a march for youth participation in economic transformation. And, you know, it reminded me of a quote by a Black conservative economist in the United States. And he was talking about a situation where he was talking to a bunch of civil rights leaders. And he was sort of came up with the controversial topic, you know, the civil rights movement is over. And the challenges that we need to deal with today cannot be solved with the solutions we had in the civil rights era, you know, boycotts and protests and all that stuff. The issues of today, unwed mothers, young pregnancy, violence, crime, not doing well in school, you know, we can't solve that by marching. So I don't know, that sort of rung on my mind. And, you know, I respect you guys, and I think you guys are doing interesting stuff. What are you trying to achieve with an event like this?
Okay, so with March, I agree with what you're saying. I agree, but you can't. It's not only marching. That's the thing. It's not only. It's a mixture of a lot of things. You know, one of the mantras that Duduzane likes to go with is "less talk, more action." Right? Let's talk, more action. He doesn't like the talking. That's played out. You know, because we can talk. We can all talk. We can all talk. Let's talk for days. Let's talk more action. Marching isn't going to solve it. You're right. Marching is not going to solve the issues, but doesn't mean we mustn't do it either. When the opportunity presents itself to do that, we must do it on top of many other things. Just I think towards the end of last year, donated a smart school to a rural school in KZN.
Oh my goodness! What?
Yeah. Well, you can, if you go a bit deeper down the social media, you'll see. You'll see.
That's really impressive.
He donated a smart school, not because he's trying to look good, but because he understands that the world has moved into a technological age, right? And it doesn't make sense that people are going to school and they don't even know what a laptop is. They don't know what a smart board is. Me and you were lucky that we were 10 years ago, we were in school and we had smart boards and things like that. But the average South African doesn't have access to that. So he was like, how am I gonna get to a point where we want young people to take over this country, but they don't even know a basic tool, like how to use a laptop, which is what's used universally. So he's a man of action. You'll see him marching. Yes, it's not going to solve the issue, but you'll see him do that. But then again, you also see him do different things, like the smart school, you know. Again, feeding schemes. Someone will say, oh, but everyone does that. But hey, does someone who's hungry, does that person eat every day? No, he doesn't. Does that mean we must stop just because it gets done every day or it gets done by other people? No, we must, because it's a good thing. It's a good thing to do. And we're not doing it because we're trying to score points. We're doing it to achieve a certain goal. So the march, all we're trying to say is we are together with the community, because the communities, what they do is the communities are the ones that come up with the programs and they say, this is what we want to do. Duduzane, we look at you as a leader of ours. Can you please come and join us? As a leader, he's going to say, you know what? I will come and help. I will come join you guys because I believe in what you guys are doing. And then when we're there, when we're talking, he'll say, guys, maybe next time let's do this and something else so that now we can take it from point A to point B to point so that we can achieve our goals.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. We are unfortunately running out of time. I think we've got about 9 minutes. So just maybe perhaps the last question. So I think what will ultimately solve a lot of the issues, especially unemployment for the youth, is our economic approach, our economic policy, and what we do in that regard. And I've been really fascinated, of course, to see you guys going out there, gaining traction, doing good works, cleaning up litter, donating smart schools to rural areas. And I really like that. But in a more systemic matter, economically, what are sort of your ideas or his ideas, or what you guys have chatted about in general, to sort of get this economy going once again and get young people employed and being able to generate their own livelihood instead of relying on social grants.
I think it's also it starts with understanding what we have as a country. We have vast resources as a country, contrary to popular belief. We have all types of natural resources. So we've been misusing that because all we do is we mine the gold and we ship it off, you know, and that's not going to create jobs. What we should be doing is we should be growing our secondary
like manufacturing
sector, secondary sector. Yeah, manufacturing. We're supposed to be processing these things. You know, we're supposed to mine the gold, process here, and then sell the finished good off and export that. Because I think that if we put a huge focus, and Duduzane is a big component of this, if we put a huge focus on that secondary sector, the manufacturing, South Africa will organically create millions of jobs. It will create, because it takes a vast number of people and labor to do to do manufacturing and things like that. So the main goal is to understand that, guys, this is what we have, you know, and let's grow, because that's been neglected. South Africa is a great primary and great at the tertiary level, but that secondary, where the meat actually is, we've neglected that. We've outsourced that, so to speak, on a grand scale. Then the other thing, just the other thing that Duduzane focuses on is policy point of view. We need lawmakers. We need young people like yourself, Lolo, great mind, lawyer, dude. We need people like you to shape the policy. You know, that's a big part that's neglected completely. You know, we don't talk about what type of policies or can we use as South Africans or create as South Africans to stimulate this growth that we're looking for. So it's policy and that secondary sector. Those are the two main big focuses where we can jumpstart our economy fast.
Okay, yeah, look, I mean, just to paraphrase to see if I understand you. So essentially, look, I agree with the secondary part of the economy, manufacturing especially, is where you can absorb the largest amount of labor, especially considering the profile of our people. We don't have many people with university degrees, for example, so we're not going to get large numbers in the tertiary sector becoming lawyers. You know, we need to give people livelihoods, and where that's the most likely to occur is in sectors such as beneficiation and manufacturing. And I guess in that regard, I'm just wondering, how have you guys talked a bit about how you would stimulate that? Would you sort of open up, get the private sector playing? Would you use incentives? Would you get perhaps a state player in there? I don't know, what's your thinking in that?
You'd have to be, realistically, you can't do it alone. Realistically, you have to get all the players. You have to get all the players. You know, you have to get all the players. So, for example, there's a program that we talk about. It's called we like to call it a YES program, Youth Economic Stimulus Program. So we go to government, we say, we can solve your issue, government, of tax base. Then we say to banks, we can say, we can solve your issue because you need more customers. We say to the government, give us $1 billion as to back young entrepreneurs, right? We can give you 25,000 entrepreneurs over the next 5 years. Each entrepreneur is going to hire 4 people minimum. Let's just say 4 million. That gives you about another 1 million people that the government has now from a new tax base that they have, that they can work with. Banks are going to say, yo, that's 1 million people, new bank owners that we can take from. Then we say, okay, these companies that are in all these sectors, we marry them off we marry them and pair them to big business, private sector. And we say to them, we understand in business there's a core asset, there's a core business, and there's a non-core business part of your business. Give young people and give these entrepreneurs the non-core parts of your business. So if I'm Pick and Pay, I'm a market setter, give this company that's backed by this program that government is backing, give young people all your logistics, because that's not your core business. Your core business is the groceries and whatever. That's your core business. Give them the technology that we go to the tills for. Give them or mines. We go to mines and we say, Anglo Gold, you have 10 gold mines. 4 of them are non-core assets. 6 of them are. The 4 that don't bother your bottom line, give those, let young companies run those, you know, and then after 5 years, come out with a checklist that we can say, okay, this company, because it worked with Anglo Gold for 5 years, it's got a 50 million rand asset base. It's got a, you know what I mean? So what you're doing is you got government, you got private, you got banking, all pooling together to now create an environment where entrepreneurs can flourish. And if entrepreneurs are flourishing, that creates jobs also organically. Mm-hmm. So you are tackling all the issues using everyone at once. So that's the type of approach that we want to go with. And it's not government, it's not private, it's everyone.
I know. I certainly agree that it will require synergy, and I like that. Unlike a lot of most ANC politicians, you're thinking also, you know, in terms of how the various role players can come in, not sort of what government can do alone. And I think, though, what will be required to achieve this, and it's something that has been lacking a bit, is trust between the players.
Yeah.
That is something I think. If there was any little bit of advice I would give, you know, I think you guys should work to build that trust and start developing bridges and relationships with these various factors or various players in the economy. And I think with the kind of support and adulation and love that there is for the Zuma family and for Duduzane in general, mixed in with some of these bridged relationships, I think you guys could achieve something really great. But Zipo, I think we're going to end off there. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. You have touched on various aspects, youth, the failures, you know, and how the government has failed youth, the path forward. You spoke about Duduzane. He's a man of humility. He's a man who's hardworking. You know, you'd never think he's a billionaire. I mean, not many people could say that. So I just appreciate for you enlightening us today. And yeah, I really look forward to any future conversations when I have. I think I'll watch closely as you guys go along and see if perhaps you're free and perhaps later moments as this campaign carries on going, especially perhaps closer to the conference. I'd really like to get more of your take on what's happening in that time. Would you be happy with that?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed the DMC. People need to know. People need to know that, guys, this guy right here was our Barack Obama. He's our Barack Obama. He's our Nelson Mandela. A very humble, you yourself, very humble, very principled man yourself. So I'm glad to see you doing what you're doing and all the successes in your life. And hopefully we can get the big man to design himself to come onto the show, because I think you guys would have a really great conversation.
Thank you so much, Zipo. You have a lovely day, my man.
Thanks, bro. You too. Bye-bye.